Hi there, my name is Doug Floyd. I'm the general manager of Hart House Theatre. Thank you so much for joining us and watching this video today, taking some time out of your day to watch the very first of our artist series that will be speaking to artists who've been on the Hart House Theatre stage and behind the scenes. We'll be doing these throughout the summer and beyond. Our first conversation today is with Andre Sills. Andre, thank you so much for joining us.
Not a problem. Pleasure to be here.
I guess it's just me. I said us, but I guess it's the us, right? Anyway, so Andre, I think, people know you. You've been on stages throughout Canada and the United States, but people know you best from your turn at the Shaw Festival and the Stratford Festival. But you
Right.
also did a couple parts at Hart House.
Yes, I
So
did.
today we're going to walk down memory lane a little bit of Hart House Theatre. This is your Hart House Theatre life, Andre Sills. How about that?
Oh, wow. I'm excited.
Does this sound like fun? So actually, the first show that we worked together on actually wasn't at Hart House at all.
hmm It was outside.
Outside, and you see, I wore this shirt.
Ah, yes.
There's not
Canopy.
there's not many occasions left where I get to wear a 10 seasons of outdoor theater for downtown Toronto shirt, but I wore this especially for today because I know you would talk about Titus
Oh,
Andronicus back
yeah,
in
man.
2003.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lifetime ago, it feels like.
Yeah, and yeah, it is a lifetime, and it was actually a pandemic ago because that was the summer of SARS.
That was SARS summer. Oh, wow.
That was the SARS summer, and Titus Andronicus actually went up against the concert at Downsview Park. There was one night where we were performing Titus outside, and we were running up against the Downsview Park special concert with the Rolling Stones and Rush and
Oh, my
all those
God.
bands. It was not one of our best crowds.
I totally forgot all of this. Oh, my gosh. I can't even remember that that was during SARS. Wow.
It
Like, there
was
was
the
no
recovery
social
summer. It
distancing.
was after the recovery. Like it was the recovery
Okay.
summer,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So outdoor theater. So there's some people watching this, and we still get emails and we still get comments. People missing outdoor theater, outdoor Shakespeare. What do
Right.
you remember from that? Is there a challenge? A challenge more than you were just right out of theater school, or even still in school, I think
I
at the
I was
time.
still in school, so I was in between my second year and third year, and third year would have been my final year at school. But yeah, outdoor theater is different because you're not in a box of a room, right? So you're out in the open air, and you have to be able to project to fill to fill the space.
Mhm.
And yeah, I guess that was my first experience with outdoor theater and really putting my theater school voice work to use.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, especially to play that guy. Oh,
And what role
Aaron,
was that you played? Yeah, Aaron.
Aaron the Moor from Titus. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
I don't remember what we did with the hole back then. I don't remember.
Oh, you mean at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't a hole. There
I
was
know.
like a
Well,
leash and a
no, there
chain,
wasn't. I just
and
wondered
then
what we did.
somebody nailed it into the ground, and I was like, okay, so I'm stuck here.
Yeah. Now,
Oh,
funny enough, Andre, that show ran in rep with Coriolanus
yes, I remember.
because we thought it was a brilliant idea to do Coriolanus and Titus Andronicus in rep. And now let this be a lesson to any producers out there thinking that is a great season in rep to put together. It's
Not
maybe
so much.
not the best idea. You might have the idea, but you don't have to do it.
It's a tough play. It's a tough play, especially if you don't have any. Like we had the uh, years later, like 2 years ago, the pleasure of doing it with all the technical aspects and all that sort of stuff, as opposed to just doing it outside with nothing. It's tough.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think I was asked if I wanted to be Titus Lartius that year, and
Right.
for whatever reason, I said no. I was like, I think I'm just gonna I think we're just gonna do Aaron. I think that's enough.
Yeah, because we had some actors back then who did both shows, and every
Yep.
night was, yeah, and
Yep.
that was, yeah, and I remember it rained every night for Coriolanus, and we called it Coriolanus because every night it rained, and it wasn't until the last performance of Titus that we got rained out. We had to actually not do the last performance, but yeah, outdoor theater is special, and right out of theater school, it puts you, there is no safety net, right?
No, no. But it was a lot of fun. And you know, um, that was a play, I think it was in first year, and somebody in my class did the Aaron the Moor speech, and I was like, "What play is that from?"
Yeah.
And then I remember getting the movie Titus in my hand, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And watched it. It's
Yeah.
like, "This is amazing!" Like it's over the top for like a revenge tragedy, and I fell in love with it then. So
Yeah.
getting an opportunity to play that summer, and I haven't touched it since. So I've been
Mm.
wanting to since then. But yeah, one of these days I'll get a chance to.
I bet there's
Oh,
another
that I
play
have
we're going to
not
talk
done
about that you got to.
1,000 more.
Yes. Now, I also remember, for some reason, I was working front of house for Titus, and one night there was a bunch of really big, burly men who came to watch the show, and there was a rugby team, and it
Mhm.
was just, it was like 15 big guys that came to sit down and have a picnic and watch Shakespeare, and I'm thinking, this is an interesting team event that they're
Uh-huh.
building a team. Maybe they're going to watch Shakespeare, but they came to see you, didn't they?
Yes, they did. That was my Toronto Nomads team. I was playing a lot of club rugby at the time, and um, yeah, I think I'm trying to remember if that was the year I was either playing for Ontario or that might have been a little prior. But I was playing for the Nomads every summer, and I think up until then, I think I played another 2 summers, and then I stopped because summertime is when summer theater is happening. So a lot of the work was coming in at that time. So as opposed to playing rugby and
Hmm.
then trying to go on stage, because I think I did it once where I played a game, came back the next day to do a show, and I had 2 black guys. So that was probably my last game, I think.
It worked
I
for the
think.
character, maybe.
Yeah, it I had a lot of makeup I had to do around the eyes, so it was fine. It was fine. But I think that was my last official game that I actually played.
Okay.
Miss it.
Okay. Yeah.
Miss it.
So you retired as a rugby player.
Yeah.
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 And so then after Titus, we moved to Othello in 2004, November of 2004, and
Yeah.
directed by Jeremy Hutton. That was in many ways a show. That production of Othello really was it was a extraordinary show, and
Right.
it is for many years, and I know this happened to you as well because we talked about this. People talked to us about that production. They loved it. Audiences adored your performance, and they loved the whole sort of operatic, heightened production of it as well.
Right.
Um, so, what do you recall of that? Like, what kind of production was it? It was kind of, it was different for in the time 2004. It was a bit different in terms of the design.
I would say the set was pretty simple,
Yeah.
but one thing that Jeremy had a great idea about was like the use of sepia tones and flash photography, um, especially for that time period of like the light bulb, like the single flash light bulb, and using those moments or using moments of soliloquies
Hmm.
to literally freeze the frame on stage, and then whoever had the soliloquy would be alive in that moment in the sepia tone.
Hmm.
And it got to be really cool as to when those moments were used. Like I remember um, right after the "It Is the Cause" speech, when Desdemona is waking up, there's moments of, there's screens as well. I forgot there were screens, and you never knew where Othello was. So one flash would be, and it would be over there, flash over there, and then the last flash. I remember I was lying down behind Sarah Swift on the ground, and at that time I used to be able to. I haven't tried it in a while. I used to be able to do a kip up. I probably still could, but I remember
you might hurt yourself
doing a kip up and then landing right in front of her. And like sometimes we'd have audience members like, ah, full on scream. It was amazing.
So
one of my favorite moments of that show.
Oh, good. And so, you know, playing that role essentially right out of theater school.
Yeah.
What is it? What kind of challenge is that, playing that role so young? Because it's not really usually played by such a young actor.
Yeah. I'm trying to think how old I was. Anyways, yeah, it was.
Well, I mean, age isn't really important, but in terms of experience, you had never taken on a role like that before.
Like that. Well, and I guess I was pretty new to Shakespeare, because I had done it in theater school in my first year, like doing a scene study of Shakespeare, and then coming to it again with Canopy for Titus, and then in our final year at George Brown, I did All's Well That Ends Well, playing Bertram. So, and I remember always people saying, you know, you should play Othello someday. And I was like, yeah. One of these days. I was afraid to look at it. But after graduating and then talking with you guys about doing it, I was like, oh, okay. All right. Let's see what this is like. And you know, it was nice to have a stretched out rehearsal process that, you know, I didn't have to bang everything in 3 weeks. Yeah. So I could take my time and strip it apart and really try and get to the heart of it. And I feel like the run at the time was like a weekend, like, was it like Thursday to Sunday or something like that? It was a short.
Yeah, it would have been 2 weekends. Would have been the run then. Yeah.
But I remember getting a good couple of kicks at the can over that run. It was like, I think that was pretty good. It was a good one tonight. There's only a couple of them where I felt really, really charged about the whole production as a whole. I feel like for me, for my own personal stab at it that time. So, but it was a great experience and taught me a lot about the type of actor I want to be. You know, I want the challenge.
Yeah.
And I think from that moment is where that seed was planted in my head of like, let's take on those big challenges.
Right. And Othello, is that a role that you've played elsewhere? Again, what has been your relationship with that character in that role?
So after Hart House, after that year, finished a year in Toronto, and then I got into the conservatory at Stratford. And then in my second season at Stratford, I understudied Philip Aiken as Othello, and also understudied him in Of Mice and Men. So I had an opportunity to, in that entire summer, I did my understudy run, and that was all I got to do with it. But I always had to be on call waiting, and I was like, I know this play. And I realized on day one, and I guess because that was 2004 when we did it, so it was 2007. I remember the first day of rehearsal for Othello at Stratford, as they're reading through the play, my internal meter started getting jacked up, and I was like, oh God, the play is still inside of me. I still feel it. So it got really hard. It got really hard because I wanted to get in so bad, and the athlete in me is like, let me in, coach, let me in. So it was really strange to kind of be an understudy for that part that I had already played. But a weird thing happened where later on that season, a guy from St. Louis came and saw the one show I was in, which was Pentecost, which was in the studio theater. He saw it and he's like, "Huh, I saw that you were understudying Othello here." He's like, "Would you like to come and play it for us?" I was like, "Play it where?" It's like, "In St. Louis, at the St. Louis Black Rep." So that December, it was just a few months down after that, I was in St. Louis and I got to play the part again with an all black cast, except for Brabantio. He was white.
Okay.
And I did that and August Wilson's last play, Radio Golf. So I played Othello first and then the lead in Radio Golf. So it was an interesting pairing of plays, because the artistic director there, Ron Himes, was saying, it takes just as much discipline to do Shakespeare as it does to do August Wilson, which was, there's a different sort of rhythm with August's writing, and that was something I had to navigate as a Canadian.
Yeah.
But an interesting process. And really, since then, and I think that's 2008, I haven't touched the play.
Well, that's not true exactly, because you just did a monologue for us that we just posted recently.
Yes.
And not to get in the weeds too much, but it is you did the monologue from Act 5, Scene 2, and maybe if you could give us for those who are going to watch that after this, maybe if you get a little bit of context to that, and why did you choose that monologue? It's obviously a very famous one, but why did you choose that one?
Well, I guess, well, I guess I'm lying when I said I haven't really touched a play since then, because for those people who have seen me do the Glass Menagerie at the Shaw Festival, I was in and around the audience before the show started, and I was doing magic tricks and things like that. But let me backtrack a bit. Okay. So one night in Niagara-on-the-Lake, where I am right now, I was going over Tom's lines, especially at the end, "Blow out your candles, Laura." And I'm looking at that last speech, and I was like, I feel like I've heard this speech before. Different. And this is like 1:30 in the morning, and I have a whiskey on my side. 1:30 in the morning, and I'm like, where have I heard this speech before? And, all the different things in that moment of Tom calling the gentleman caller, the gentleman caller calling Tom Shakespeare, and all these little things throughout that play. And I was like, it is the caught speech, where put out the light, and then put out the light, blow out your candles, Lord, and then going through, that painful speech of what he's going to do to his wife, which is basically what Tom does at the end of the play, like breaking down what he does to his sister in just two different, slightly different ways. But also, like, who can say that they've ever figured out that connection between Othello and Glass Menagerie? How many black guys have played Tom? Not many. So, like, I remember looking it up on Google. It's like, is there a connection between Glass Menagerie and Othello? And I came across this one thing that was saying between the candles and and put out the lights and some other different things that I was starting to talk about. But that gave me the idea to, at the beginning of the show, as I'm doing magic tricks and wanting to share some poetry with the audience, I did a part of the "It is the cause" speech. So coming back to it again, I figured it would be nice to reconnect with that whole speech, since, yeah, I figured it'd be nice to do something from Othello for you guys, since that's basically where I hit the main stage with you guys. So thought it was a good place to reconnect with.
Yeah. And so looking at that role now versus, right out of theater school, do you think you would approach it differently as an actor and as a role? Do you think if you were to play this again, it would be a total different experience for you?
I think so. I mean, I've seen some other productions of it, and I'm not saying that what I did was perfect, by no means. But I guess I'm really, I guess some people have shied away from the issue of race in the play. I don't know if people as a whole in the world before like a month ago have been trying to say, yeah, we don't really live in that world anymore, where race is at the forefront. But, since the world has exploded post George Floyd, it's hard to ignore that race is still a problem. And, and I guess one of those things I'm also thinking about for him is, how alone is he? Because he's out of his element. He's not from Venice. He's an outsider who's trying to find some semblance of home, and is he allowed to have that? You see him with like an ounce of happiness at the beginning, and then it all starts to fall apart. And he goes back to what he knows, the warrior. Like, part of me has always wanted to come Act 5, that very scene. Othello's a knife thrower. He's laced with weapons all over him. So, how, because I remember when we did it, I had like 4 knives strapped to me, and like I'd stab one person, they disarm me, but I always had like another 3 stashed away. But like, I always wanted him to be like a knife thrower. They could just start throwing them at people. But one of these days, maybe.
One of these days.
But yeah, it would be. I mean, I would love to explore it again. I have some ideas about the play as well, but I'm not going to say that on here. That's from myself until
of course. Yeah,
that opportunity comes up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it would be very different from the, I guess, 3 previous experiences, and it's been about 12 years since I've touched it, the full journey.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. So but before we come back to that in a little bit, let's touch on the most recent show you've done at Hart House, which is Richard III.
Mm-hmm.
And you played the title character. That's all you do, is play title characters.
I try.
So that show, you came back. That was in 2009, and you were more of an established actor at that time, and you came back to the company to.
Well, I won't quite say established, because but when I did Othello with you guys, I got into Stratford. I was at Stratford for 4 years and was still hungry.
Yeah.
And, the actor beast who got to play Othello for you guys wasn't able to play Othello at Stratford. So, I was charged and energized to do something and it wasn't happening. So I left.
Yeah.
And the opportunity for Richard came up and I was like, yeah, because I wanted it so badly.
Right.
So yeah.
And what is it about that role that actors love? It just draws actors to it. What is it about Richard III? Why is it such a fun role to play?
Because he's so bad and people love him. Like he's killing people left, right, and center. And while he's doing it, he's like, oh, audience, you loved me doing that, didn't you? Huh? He's so. It's interesting where he gets you on his side. And, he takes you for the journey up until he gets what he wants and then he forgets about you. But that first, first 2/3 of the show is just like, I need you to come along with me while I do these terrible things. And, when he gets too far and once he gets the crown on his head, he forgets about the people who he brought along on the journey. Yeah, it's just so juicy and fun. There's so many, he's constantly working. Like I remember, I remember during our tech and with all the fights because we had the end of Henry VI, Part 3, at the beginning of our show with that battle.
So yeah, so the production didn't start with "Now is the winter." It actually had a little bit of an intro.
Yeah, so they had to kill Henry first, and then eased into the now is the winter of our discontent. But I remember that tech week. I feel like I didn't feel. I did. I sweat through like 3 humps, and I lost about 10 pounds. Just because of like the strange movement, all the fighting, all of the energy it took to. And like I've also seen like some productions where everything is so easy for Richard, and that drives me mental. He's working so hard from the beginning. Like Lady Anne comes on, and he's killed her father-in-law and her husband, and he convinces her to marry. It's like that's not easy. That takes a lot of work. And I remember I was like, ooh, after that scene, I was like, was ever a woman so, because it's ridiculous. And somehow he manages to do it. But yeah, it was just so juicy to chew on those words and go on that ride from the beginning to the end. And him being a warrior despite of his deformities from birth, he's like, I am gonna go out fighting. A horse, a kingdom for a horse. He wants to fight and retain what he worked for. And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
In terms of a production compared to Othello, it was a much bigger scale in terms of set and number of people involved and the fight scenes and everything. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, Andre, about the scale of Hart House Theatre and the stage and the auditorium. It's pretty big compared to, especially for people coming out of theater school, if you're used to a black box kind of stage. What is that is that a challenge for young actors, or and what kind of how is that an opportunity for young actors to be on that type of scale of stage? And in terms of that scale of a production with that kind of set and costumes and what we gave to that Richard III production.
Well, it's a treat because there's not many stages like that in Toronto, and especially with one that has such history. Um, so for a guy, and one other thing that we forgot is that I did actually perform on the Hart House stage right before Titus. I did The Wind in the Willows as Mr. Toad with George Brown, and that's something that they
Yeah.
don't do anymore.
Well,
But
it
that's
was
because they
because
have
this is before they had their own space.
exactly.
Yeah.
But there was something about being on the Hart House stage that was really invaluable. That really gives you the real idea of what it is to be on a proscenium march
Yep.
stage, and it's a big space. The stage is big and deep, and it takes some vocal energy to fill the space, and getting an opportunity to play on that before you to play on that before like I got an opportunity to speak on the Avon or on the festival stage at Stratford Festival or any other place is invaluable, because you have the knowledge of what it is to be on your voice, and to know that you can fill the auditorium easily without having to overexert yourself.
Right.
So it was really a treat. It was really a treat.
So yeah, I guess you talked a bit about performing on a proscenium stage at Hart House. Was there any other ways that performing at Hart House sort of helped prepare you for other challenges that were to come in your acting career?
Well, the one thing for me that for both shows actually, for Othello and Richard, the one thing that was always apparent to me is that I needed my cast. I needed my director, and especially for Richard, I needed our dramaturg. So we had Jeremy Hutton, Susan Bond, who was the two of them invaluable. I always loved when we would get stuck on an idea in rehearsal, and Jeremy would be like, "Let's stop. I'm gonna go for a cigarette break," and then after he had that smoke, he comes, "I figured it out. Here it is." And usually it was brilliant, and that would be the thing that we would do. And especially for all the historical context of the play, and be like, "Susan, what's going on?" So this person killed so and so, and because of that, this is what happened. And Susan's knowledge of everything at that time was amazing. But yeah, just really knowing that, especially as I said, for both shows, like needing the cast so much, because and this for me, it always comes back to be to sports and playing team sports.
Yeah.
Is you need your team to win, and the only way you're really going to win is if you do it as a team. So, and that's the way I think theater works best, because we can have a big, like, sure, I could score 60, 70 points and still lose. As we watched The Last Dance, or was it The Last Dance? Yeah, with Michael Jordan. And how many games did he have where he scored over 50 points and still lost the game? So recognizing that, hey, I can't do this by myself. I need my cast to help me through. And that was the one thing that I really took away from theater school, is like, my acting teacher's like, I don't care what sort of method you take, you bring to the table. The only thing I really care about is if you're a generous actor.
Mm.
That's the most important thing. Be generous with your scene partner, and like that takes care of most of the work. So yeah.
That's great advice for young up and coming actors, for sure. I know that you were just part of a panel at Stratford
Yeah.
that is really essential viewing for anyone who is in the theater ecosystem, be it staff or someone who works on stage or people in the audience.
Right.
For those who have not seen that yet, it's called
Black Like Me.
Black Like Me, sorry, and it is behind the scenes look at Stratford. Can you explain a little bit about what people could expect when they watch that, and where can people still see that?
It's still on YouTube. If you look up the Stratford Festival and scroll through their videos, there will be one titled "Black Like Me," and
Yeah.
it's a good sit. It's a good sit through. It's about 2 hours and 15 minutes
Mm-hmm.
with a panel of actors and some people who work behind the scenes at the festival over the years, um, just talking about their experience and what it takes to navigate the theater. Like, and the Stratford Festival was used as a main example of people who worked there, but it happens across the country. But what it's like to navigate the theater as a person of color.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think it opened a lot of eyes for people of what it takes for us to be there. And and also doing some of the parts that they ask us to do. But yeah, it's a great watch, and I suggest you watch that one, and then also look. There's another one that they just did as well with some indigenous artists that I think was just like a week ago. Whenever this plays, it might not be a week ago, but
Yeah.
um, I'd say give yourself a sit down and watch them both, because it's one aspect of a bigger conversation. And one thing I keep saying is I think theater is really meant to bring people together as opposed to tear us apart. We tear each other apart on stage on purpose to show you something. But I think to show you something so that I think you can be better. Because I remember, like, the one word that keeps on coming up from theater school is catharsis. What is that catharsis? That life-changing moment for you, or where does that come from in the theater? Where is that moment of change? What is the thing in any of these shows that is going to make you better? And we got to be able to have the hard conversations and really just open up and see each other and hear each other and find a way to move forward. Because we're doing all these plays that should be museum pieces. I mean, we can fly to the moon, we can do crazy things like that, but people understanding each other, like talking to one another as human beings, seems to be hard.
Mm.
So I don't, like, part of me is really frustrated that that's still the case, but I see the work that needs to be done, and I hope people on a whole are open to that conversation.
Mhm. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us about that, Andre. And I know that the Stratford panel that you did is at some moments very raw and uncomfortable, but it really is a necessary conversation. And from a Hart House Theatre perspective, back in 2004, even 2009, you were one of the
Yeah,
few faces of color that was on the stage,
yeah,
and we have strived to be better, and we are working on it. And like I said, we've made some strides over the last couple of years, but there's much more work to do,
right,
and we know that.
yeah,
So thank you, Andre, for having a conversation about that. If people want to see a little bit more of Andre Sills, more than just the monologue that they see on Facebook that you did for us, there is Coriolanus actually streaming on CBC Gem.
yes. So there's Coriolanus on CBC Gem and The Tempest, where I play Sebastian as well. So those two are there, and you can actually see the entire. I know Stratford's doing their film series right now on YouTube, but for those of us who are in Canada, it's been on CBC Gem, so you can go and watch them at your own leisure.
Andre, thank you so much for taking the time to do a little bit of memory lane at Hart House
Yeah,
Theatre, and um, we all look forward to seeing you back on stage and following your career as things go and things get back to being able to put on live entertainment again. So thank you,
yeah,
Andre, so much. Thank you.
not a problem. Thank you.